Hello everybody, long time no see. I hope you are doing fine. Today I would like to show you a short introduction video for Falcon BMS 4.34. Falcon BMS is a game I have just recently tried to play again, and as a complete newbie to that game I thought I would be the perfect junior pick to see what's easy to do and what not, and I found that the first training mission is a little bit hard to come by for a newcomer, so the idea was just to give some introduction which might be easier to follow than the official training manual. You will find the procedures which I'm using here in this video linked in the description of the video, and I would recommend to take them and read them alongside with the official training manual, because the training manual is a good read, but it's not quite suitable to actually get through the RAM start procedure of the training mission number 1 in my point of view. There is also quite a lot of abbreviations, some of them you might know, some of them not. I found that there are quite a couple of pitfalls in the abbreviations, but also in finding switches and knobs to dial. And, well, being as ignorant as I am, of course I suppose that you have the same knowledge like I do, so everything that I consider as a pitfall is something I will explain to you here, and everything that I consider self-explaining is something I will not talk about too much. In the official training manual, the chapter about that first training mission also holds a couple of points where everything is just eye candy and optional test procedures and so on. We will skip them here as well, just for the sake of completeness. Everything is in here to get your plane started from the ramp, but we are just skipping all those optional and eye candy parts, just not to confuse you too much. Enough talking, let's dive into it. Here we are in the Falcon BMS launcher, and the training missions are to be found in the tactical engagement. Click on that one, and we are going to do the training mission number 1. Left click on this and click commit. On the next step you will have to choose the plane you are going to fly. By default you are positioned in the first plane available, and that's not the one we want to pick. Our plane is the last one, the training plane. That's an F-16B Block 15. Click this one and then click the plane to jump the seat, and then click on takeoff. Next you have to select the takeoff conditions. We are going to do a ram start. This is your jet is standing cold on the ramp with canopy open, and you have to get everything up and running yourself. Once the game has started, you will hear a lot of noise, and I will freeze the game instantly afterwards and will explain to you what I did there and why I did this. So let's freeze the game. In freeze mode, we can still move around, click buttons, the time is still running, but everything outside and everything that's moving really on our own plane is not doing anything there. So you can see here we can move around our viewpoint by pressing and holding the right mouse button, which you can turn the head right and left, and you can turn it up and down. Pressing and holding the center mouse button lets you move the head forward, backward, right and left. And if you don't press any mouse button, you can move around your cursor here, and if there's a yellow cross, there's nothing to click there. If there's a green plus sign, which is a bit magnetic, sticky to the positions where it actually appears, then there's either a switch or a knob which you can operate. If you left click on the switch or knob, you toggle it up or clockwise. If you right click on it, you toggle it down or counterclockwise. If it's a knob, you can also use the mouse wheel if you have one to turn it around. So let's start with chapter 1.1, the first sweep before starting the engine. First step is the external lightings panel. Here we have to check that anti-collision lights are off, position flashlights are steady, and wing tail position lights and fuselage lights are bright. So we have to toggle this one, and the other one will come with it automatically. We proceed to the aux com panel and check that the CNI knob is in backup position. CNI is Com Nav IFF, that's communications, navigation and identification, friend or foe. It's in backup position per default already, just check that. One step up further is the fuel panel, and we have to check that the fuel master switch is in master position and the guard is down. and we have to rotate the engine feed knob into norm position. Step 3 is the electrical panel, the ELEC panel. The only thing we have to do here is to toggle the main power switch from off to battery position. There's a couple of warning lights coming up on the ELEC panel here, and the official training manual tells you a lot about all the lights that are coming up and to check this and so on, but we're just skipping this because it's always exactly the lights you are expecting that will come up here automatically, so don't waste too much time on this. We proceed to the Audio 1 panel, which is this one here, and on the Audio 1 panel at the moment COM1, which is the UHF communication system, and COM2, which is VHF, are both set to off position, the counterclockwise utmost position. That way both radios are off, and we want to turn them on and tune up the volume all the way, so just turn them clockwise to the furthest position here. Further on, the MSL knob, that's the missile warning thread sound, should also be almost in 12 o'clock position, so we get a bit across this, and the common thread sounds should also be above the 12 o'clock, which they are already. Finally, we go down to the Audio 2 panel, and here we have an ILS knob. If it's in counterclockwise position, ILS is turned off. You cannot fine-tune the volume here, you can just left-click on it, then it's on and the volume is all the way up. That's what it should be. Further up to the backup UHF panel. Here we want to turn on the whole panel, the whole system, by rotating the main operation knob from off to both position, and we want to turn the operation mode from preset to manual, so we can manually dial in a frequency here. The frequency we are using is the ground frequency of Kunsan Air Base, where we are standing on. That is 273.525 megacycles. So let's dial in the frequency here, and later on we might even hear some ATC chatter going on. We proceed to the right hand side panel, and here we are going to the lighting panel. On the lighting panel we can turn on or off the backup illumination of the instrument panels, the data entry display, and floodlights in the cockpit. So we want to have backlight illumination set to medium position, that's 12 o'clock. Data entry display is already fully bright, that's okay. And the floodlights we don't need because we are in daylight condition. There's also a possibility to turn on a spotlight inside the cockpit, especially helpful at night. Once the battery switch is on, Shift and S will turn on the spotlight, toggle it again, spotlight is off. Finally, we need the air condition panel, which is hidden slightly behind that handrest for the stick here, so move the head forward a little bit.
Tiger 1, abort sequence, contact ground.
See, there's the
Tiger 2,
ATC chatter.
Alpha, and hold short, runway 36.
So what we need to do on the air condition panel is to
Tiger 2, taxiing.
turn the air source from off to norm position in order to enable cooling of our instruments. Otherwise you will have hot equipment warning later on, because the instruments will overheat when everything is up and running. The second sweep starts on the electrical panel again. Let's move the head back a bit again. Here we are toggling the main power switch now into main power position, so we are able to start the engine, which is the second step. We are switching to the engine and jet start panel. Before we are starting the engine, we should actually close the canopy, because otherwise we will breathe our exhaust gas, it will be extremely noisy and so on. The canopy is being handled by the spider here. You can either click on it, it's the upper left corner here, or just press Ctrl C to close the canopy. I will left click on it, you can see the shadow moving here, and the canopy is coming down. On the jet fuel starter we have two starting modes. Start 1 would be just one oxygen bottle, so you could later use the second one in start 2 mode, but nowadays the usual starter procedure is to go and use both bottles. That will be the best way to start the engine. So we right click on this switch to toggle the start 2 position. About 10 seconds later we are expecting the run light for the jet fuel starter system to come up. Let's wait for this. Here we are. And now actually the engine would spool up, but it cannot because we have frozen our simulation here. So in order to be able to see the engine actually spool up, we have to unfreeze again with Shift P. You can hear that the noise is considerably less because we have the canopy closed now, so you can actually work in these conditions here. We are gonna wait until RPMs are up to about 20%. And we are expecting the SEC caution panel light to go off then. Here we are, SEC caution panel light is off. And we should wait a little bit for the RPMs to stabilize, because if you proceed from this point on too quickly, you will figure that your engine will be prone to do a hot start, and this is ending up in a fire if you counter that immediately. Let's just freeze the simulation for a split second again here, and the next thing is something we have to prepare a bit. When we now operate our throttle, we are expecting the FTIT to rise a little bit. That's the fan turbine inlet temperature gauge. It will rise to about 600, 650 degrees and then go back to about 500 or something in idle condition again. If it goes above 750 degrees, then we are having a hot start and we would have to immediately interrupt the start again by throttling back to idle. The next thing to happen would be the hydraulic and oil pressure light here in the right eyebrow. This is the right eyebrow, will go off at about 30 to 35% RPM. This is what we are going to watch first now. In order to move the throttle out of the idle position, we have to press the idle detent callback key. That's Alt and I. You actually see the throttle moving forward a little bit out of idle position now. If we unfreeze the game, the RPMs will start to catch up, and we should monitor the FTIT gauge that it's not going above 750 degrees Celsius. Unfreezing again, FTIT is going up, RPMs are coming up, and about 30 to 35% the hydraulics pressure light should go off. We have that. Freeze it again, and the next step would be that some lights on the electrical panel will go off, especially here that FLCS PMG light, that's the upper light. It will go off at about 40 to 45% RPM. Let's move around a bit so we can see both of it. Unfreeze again, and the light is off already. We are roughly at 40% RPMs now. At 55%, the JFS run light should go off. Unfreeze again. Watch the two. And freeze. And the JFS jet fuel starter system switch automatically snips back to off position. The engine light on the right eyebrow will go off at about 60% RPM. Unfreeze and wait a little bit. And at the same time, all the lights in the instrument panel come up, and all lights on the ELAC panel, except for the main generator, will be off. The main generator will come on about 10 seconds later. So let's keep an eye on this here, and unfreeze again. FTIT temperatures are still fine. We are waiting those magic 10 seconds. Yeah, main generator light is off, and we can see that FTIT, after it has been raising to 600 degrees, is going back to about 500 again. Time to freeze the simulation again and check a few more gauges. One is the fuel flow gauge. It is supposed to be between 700 pph and 1700 pph. 1100 therefore is absolutely fine. The nozzle position should be greater than 94%. We are at about 95-96, and the hydraulic pressure gauges A and B should be both in about 12 o'clock position. We are going to the right hand side panel, and we are going to the Avionics Power panel here. Here we have to turn on all the switches. MMC, which is the modular mission computer. STSTA, that's store station and the store's management system. The MFD, multifunction displays. UFC is the upfront controls. GPS, it's self-explaining, and DL is actually the data link system here. All of them are powered up, and now we are turning our head upwards and we are waiting for the DED, that's the data entry display, the display up front here, to come online. Here we are. Go back to the Avionics Power panel again, and now we can toggle the main INS knob to align norm position. In align norm position, the INS system is supposed to come online. You can see that by the INS counting up here. Later on, when it's fully online, the aux flag and the ADI, that's the attitude direction indicator, is supposed to go away. We are proceeding to the sensors panel, which is on the right hand side console up front here. And on the sensors panel we are gonna switch on the FCR, that's the fire control radar, and we are toggling the radar altitude into standby mode. Step 5 on the startup procedure in the official manual asks you to check the INS to count up. We did that before already, so this is done. Next step is to turn on the head-up display, so left click on the ICP sim wheel here to turn on the head-up display, and then click the fault acknowledge button, the FACK, on the left eyebrow here. We can check the caution panel for any remaining caution lights, and nothing is on here, so we can now press the master caution button to acknowledge all the current caution states we have. This is a good practice to press this away, so later on if a new caution is coming up, you can actually see that the master caution light is coming up as well, and when this is on you can check the pilots for this display and the caution panel and see what actually has happened, and once you dealt with it, then press the master caution button to acknowledge that caution condition so you are aware of the next one coming up again later on. Finally, we are gonna clear the master fault list. The master fault list is on the multifunction displays. We have to go to the test page on the MFD. Take care, never take for granted what's on the left hand or the right hand side of the MFDs, because with the swap button you can actually toggle them right and left around. So we are going to take the test page now, and then we should press the OSB number 3. OSB is the option select buttons, that's the buttons around here, and 1, 2, 3 is the clear one, so we can clear this list of maintenance issues we've had here. So the maintenance fault list is cleared. Good practice again. Press test once more so you untoggle the test page. We are going back to the left hand side panel, to the aux.com panel again, and this time we set the IFF, the Identification Friend Foe System, into standby mode, and we are turning the CNI, remember that's the Common Nav IFF interface, into UFC position so we can actually operate this with the upfront controls. Before we start using the UFC, the upfront controls, we should load the DTC into our system using the MFD, the multifunction displays. The DTC is the data transfer cartridge holding all the mission parameters like navigation points, frequencies and so on. In order to do so, we click on the DTE button, that's the data transfer equipment, and press the option select button number 3, OSB 3, that's load. We see something blinking here, and finally the data will be loaded. The order is important because the DTC holds all the mission-specific parameters, and we might want to change some of them manually later on, so the order will always have to be load the whole general data set first and do your manual adjustments to it later. On the UFC, the upfront controls, we are now gonna set up our UHF and VHF radios. For UHF, press the COM1 button, so we see in the DED that we are on the UHF page. We are going to dial in the ground control frequency, which is always on preset number 2. So you can either enter whole frequencies here or just presets. So press 2 and enter, and we are automatically on preset number 2 for UHF, ground control. Now we are going to the VHF radio, that's COM2, and in COM2 we want to have our flight communications available here, so we are dialing preset number 15. Now we go to the third sweep, checks and avionics setup. This will be a quite quick start because step 1 in the official training manual is the test panel, and we skip it because it's completely eye candy only. Step 2 is the flight control panel, also just eye candy. Step 3, manual trim panel, eye candy. Step 4, fuel panel, it's eye candy, skip that. Step 5, EPU panel. We don't even need to go to the panel itself. The only thing we need to do is we have to remove the EPU safety pin, which is actually in place right now, and only the ground control can remove it. So we have to call the ground control, and we press T for communications here, and we select option number 1, install remove EPU ground safety pin, and the red warning line disappears. Step 6 is the ECM panel. We go to the left-hand side panel, and the ECM panel is over here. We are toggling the main switch here from off to operate. Step 7 is the SEC, that's the secondary engine controls check. We can skip this, it's just eye candy. And step 8 would be checking the speed brake. No need to do that now. It would be eye candy as well. The speed brake is operating, trust me. So we proceed to the threat warning aux or TWA panel. This one is on the left hand side aux console, and we only have to press one button here. This is the TWA panel, and we just press the power button so the green power light comes on and the system is actually operating. On we go to the CMDS panel. The CMDS panel is to the right of it here, and we have to toggle the radar warning receiver switch to on and the jammer switch to on as well. And we should enable chaff and flare, which is the CH switch and the FL switch. Program switch should be set to 1 and the mode should be in auto. And now we have to check that the go light is green. It is, so we are good to go. We proceed to the threat warning prime panel, that's the TWP panel up here, and on the threat warning prime panel we have to press the sys test button first. And once the sys test has been running, we can click on
31, contact tower for takeoff. Switch to 29230.
On the launch button to do this test as well. And finally we click the handoff button, so we have everything in the so-called diamond float mode, so the TWP system is running. On we go with some manual settings on the DED, on the data entry display here. We are supposed to set the A low level, that's the altitude low level. This is actually the altitude where Betty, our female voice in the headset, calls altitude if we pass below that altitude. This is just a reminder to dial in the correct pressure for the base we are just going to land on. So it's important to set A low to the level being used here. The MSL level on this airbase is 14,000 feet. So what we are going to do is we are selecting the A low page, and now we have to double down to select the MSL floor level page. This is the cursor down a little bit. You can also use the cursor keys on your keyboard, by the way, and instead of these ones you can also use the keys on your numpad, but just saying. So we are dialing in 14,000 feet here and press enter for A low. Next we are going to the TILS page, so we return again, select TILS, and now we make sure that TACAN is set to channel 75, band X, and in transmit receive mode. And we also enter our ILS frequency. For the runway we are going to use the ILS frequency is 110.30. Just enter it, and it will automatically see that this is an ILS frequency and apply it accordingly. Check that the ILS indicator is on, so we didn't forget to turn the switch in the beginning of this session. And finally, on the ICP list, we are going to select bingo. That's the fuel level when Betty is calling bingo bingo, so we have to land then. And this bingo fuel level for this sortie is 3,000 pounds. Enter this one. Go back to the main DED page, and we are going down to the fuel quantity selector panel and make sure that the selector switch is in norm position, so the fuel gauge will actually tell us our real fuel level. You can also test several fuel levels on your plane, but this is just eye candy at the moment. We are going to the right hand side aux console and we check the PFLD for any remaining faults. We check the caution list for any remaining faults. We press FACK again just to be on the safe side. Make sure that the master caution light is off, and check the EPU fuel level. That's down here on that gauge. It should be between 95 and 102%. And then finally check the avionics power setting. We should have an align blinking here on the head-up display. The aux flag should be gone. Everything is fine, so INS is aligned, and we can turn the INS knob from align norm to nav. And from here on we have all the navigation deeds on our multifunction display. Arm the ejector seat down here. enable nose wheel steering. On a US keyboard this would be Shift and slash, that's the slash key is left to the right hand side Shift button, and at the same position on a German keyboard you will press Shift and minus, and on the right hand side the NWS indexer will come up on that right eyebrow here. We proceed to the ICP again and dial the VHF settings, and this time we are gonna manually enter the ATIS system. ATIS is the Air Traffic Information System, which tells us about the local air pressure, which runway to use, the winds and so on. So in order to enter ATIS frequency 120.225 megacycles, we dial COM2 and then we enter 12022. This is, sorry, 12022. You don't enter the 5 because there's nothing more to enter here. So
temperature
this is the ATIS.
22 degrees Celsius. Altimeter 2984 inches.
Altimeter is 2984, so we have to take our barometric altimeter and
Information
dial
Juliet.
this to 2984 here in the lower left hand
Runway
corner.
36. Expect visual approach. Wind
We have
319
winds,
degrees,
gusts,
14
and the
knots.
runway. That's
Gusts
all
2,
we need.
3.
We can go back
Visibility
to the
10
VHF
kilometers or more.
channel we've been using before,
Sky
which
conditions,
is preset number
clouds,
15.
Few 5,000 feet. Temperature 22 degrees Celsius. Altimeter
Otherwise,
2984
ATIS
inches.
will keep talking to us all the time, so don't forget to set VHF back to your normal frequency here. Now we are actually ready to taxi out, so make sure that you engage the parking brake, that's the one here, and everything is green, no caution lights remaining anymore. Contact ATC ground and advise them to remove chocks. T again and select option number 2, remove chocks. You can unfreeze the game at this stage, and then we can toggle the ATC ground again and say request taxi for departure. 3.
Goblin 2, Singleton, F-16, request a taxi. Good morning, Goblin 2. Your number 3 for departure. Taxi Alpha. Then hold short, runway 36.
So we are asked to taxiway Alpha and hold short at the end of runway 36, that's the southern end of runway, and we are the third to taxi. So we are the third to taxi because there are others up front, but we are clear to taxi right away. He didn't tell us to hold position, so we can start taxiing. So disengage the parking brake, right hand click here, and apply a little throttle, and the plane will start moving. Now step on your toe brakes. If you don't have any, it's keyboard K, and for me it's the slider on the throttle, and make sure the nose actually dips down.
Lion 4-1, contact tower for takeoff. Switch to 29230.
So we are gonna follow that yellow line here. I'm switching on my track IR so I can look around a little bit, and yeah, it's a good thing to turn on the INS page on our ICP again. So we click list and select INS, that's number 6, enter, because that way we will have a ground speed indicator here in the lower right hand corner. Otherwise, below 60 knots we will not see how fast we are traveling actually. And we are supposed to travel a maximum of 25 knots when going straight and 10 knots when doing turns. So once we arrive at the south end of runway 36, we are gonna go into a parking position first. Here on the left hand side you can see those yellow things. And as the flight leader of our remaining planes, we are gonna use the closest parking position to the runway, so the tower will actually pick up on us. We go here, park away from the taxiway.
Goblin 2, is there a problem? Goblin 2-1, contact tower for takeoff. Switch to 29230.
So we've been asked to contact tower. That's required to ask for takeoff clearance. And at this time we are doing our last chance checks, and when we are finished and we think we are ready, we are gonna actually switch to the tower frequency. So we have finished our last chance checks, so we can follow the advice to switch to the tower frequency. That's COM1 preset number 3. And then we can report that we are ready for takeoff. Before we do so, disengage the parking brake, and while we are stepping on the toe brakes to stand still. So we are on the tower frequency now, and we are going to press T again, and report ready for departure.
Goblin 2, Singleton, F-16, ready for departure. Goblin 2-1, what is your problem? You are disrupting traffic.
Yeah, that's
Goblin 2, Unison Tower, weighing 320 at 8 knots, runway 36. You're cleared for takeoff.
Alright, we are cleared for takeoff. So we are gonna switch to the departure frequency now. That's preset number 4. And then we are going back to the list and toggle the INS display, so we have the ground speed indicator here again. So let's taxi to the takeoff point. And when we arrive there, we should line up perfectly with the direction of the runway. For runway 36 in Kunsan, this is actually 356 degrees. So we are going to the center line. And up there on the heads-up display you can actually see an indicator telling us which direction we are pointing to, and we should be roughly at 356 degrees before we are starting our takeoff run. Okay, that's it, perfectly aligned. We've seen the wind announcements on the ATIS before. Here you also see a windsock, and you can check this to estimate the wind direction and the speed. And before we are actually starting to take off, we should remember the procedure of doing so. So the first step will be, while we are still on the toe steps here, we are going to throttle up until we reach a stable RPM of 90%. Once we reach that, we are gonna throttle up to Buster, that's military power, 100%, and then we are gonna proceed further on and engage the afterburner. You can see that the afterburner is kicking in, you can hear it, and you can see it also on the fuel flow indicator in the lower right corner. You can see that from the corner of an eye. We will accelerate very quickly because we released the toe brakes at that point already, and once we reach about 40 knots we should disengage the nose wheel steering. That's, remember, shift and slash or shift and minus on the keyboard, German keyboard, and make sure that the nose wheel steering indicator light on the right eyebrow is off in that case as well. Our rotation speed is about 127 knots, so at that speed we are gonna gently pull the stick, and the nose will come up slowly, and you have to rise it until the gun cross is at the 10 degrees indicators in the heads-up display. You can see indicators running through here at the side then. The speed actually you will see on the left-hand sideband, and in the main training manual you will also see digital indicators, but we don't have them here on the block 15, F16 actually, so you have to deal with the sidebands. On the right-hand sideband you have the altitude indicator, and if it's 5.0 we have reached our target altitude, just saying. Okay, so you lift the nose to 10 degrees, not more, because at 14 degrees you will risk a tail strike. 10 degrees, then wait until the plane actually lifts into the air, raise the gear and report that you are airborne. Continue accelerating to 350 knots with burner engaged. If you reach 350 knots, throttle back so you are in Buster 100% but no afterburner anymore. And continue your climb at 350 knots, so maintain climb angel so you stay at 350 knots. The gear must be in below 305 knots, so don't forget, as soon as you lift off, raise the gear. So continue climbing at 350 knots until you reach 5,000 feet, and then level out and throttle back so you maintain 350 knots. That's our go. So let's see how all of this is going. We are gonna throttle up a little bit. 90%. Disengage rear brakes. Proceed further on. We have reached 40 knots, so nose wheel steering off. We have reached 127. Slowly lift the nose. Gear in. Report airborne.
Goblin 2, airborne, Singleton, F-16.
Goblin 2, Kunasan, departure, fly heading 355, resume on navigation.
350, go to Buster. Maintain 350 knots here in the air. Stay on 355 as advised. And we are slowly reaching 5,000 feet, so level out here and throttle back so we stay at 350. That's it, we are airborne. Fine. I hope you managed this too, and hope to see you soon at, well, maybe a second video then. Let's see. Bye bye.